Hey kaiju fans. So, it's been a while, and I'll talk more in length at other times about where I've been and what I've been up to, and some of you might already know. But today, we're here to focus on something special. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're having a look at the Hammond Collection Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3. Now, over the years, we've had a lot of third-party Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus figures, mainly from Nanmu with their statues and their upcoming articulated Spinosaurus. But it is really something special to me when Universal officially licensed products from Jurassic actually acknowledge the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, and in such an impressively large way as a Hammond Collection figure of this magnitude. Now, a fun little story, I actually got to pick up this one in Louisiana with my good friend Aiden when I went to visit him to see opening night of Jurassic World Rebirth. And it was the first proper toy hunt that both him or I have ever been on, with the specific goal of finding Hammond Collection Spinosaurus, one for each of us. And we went to 2 targets. They didn't have anything, we were losing hope, and the last target within a reasonable driving distance had 4 Hammond Collection Spinosaurus, so it was a really cool experience. Now, for those of you who know, this particular interpretation of Spinosaurus is the entire reason why I'm into dinosaurs. It's the entire reason I'm here sitting in front of you talking about this figure and having a YouTube channel, which just passed its 10-year anniversary, by the way, so this figure came at a perfect time. Some people might already know the story, but when I saw Jurassic Park 3 as a wee little toddler, I liked dinosaurs just as much as any other kid, but seeing the Spinosaurus, I didn't care if it beat the T-Rex, I didn't care if it was the quote-unquote biggest, most powerful carnivore at the time or whatever. I saw this thing and I was like, what is that giant bipedal crocodile with a fin on its back that's bigger than T-Rex? That is just wild. And this thing was my window into the world of exploring paleontology and dinosaurs as a whole. So I will always utterly treasure this particular interpretation of the animal. Oh no, did I scrape your back when I was moving? Funnily enough, I seem to have misplaced my tape measure in the midst of my move. So guess what we're bringing back, ladies and gentlemen? Ye old flexi ruler. Goodness gracious, you have seen better days. So this thing is utterly massive, so I wanted to start with a quick little measurement of it so you guys get the idea of how large it is. So if we go like here to here, it looks like it is about 25 inches long, so just over 2 feet long. So the size is utterly impressive on this figure. And for comparison here, I'll put it next to the good old Ceratosaurus from Jurassic Park 3 that we reviewed a good while ago. This thing is worth its weight in gold now. Which honestly, if we're going by weight, isn't that much because it doesn't weigh that much. But anyway, you can see the sheer size difference between like a more average sized Hammond Collection figure and something like this Spinosaurus. It's absolutely massive. I think the Giganotosaurus is slightly longer, if I'm not mistaken, but this thing is still impressive. And for around 60 bucks, like, this is a centerpiece of a toy for your shelf. And yes, I'll still call it a toy. I still think these things are still in the toy category. In terms of production quality, paint apps and everything, they still feel very much like toys to me. I've said it many times and I'll say it again. I think the main line for Mattel should just be stuff like this. Like, even thinking back to when I was a kid, and maybe I was just particularly picky with my dinosaur toys, I didn't really care about all of the action features and stuff. There's some really cool ones. Like you've seen, I've reviewed the couple of the Jurassic World Rebirth toys that are very cool. But I want something to pose, you know, open and close the mouth, move all the joints individually and everything. Like this would have been my favorite toy as a kid. But I also wanted to bring out the Ceratosaurus this early and do the little size comparison this early because I wanted to show just how much the Hammond Collection has improved. The Ceratosaurus is one of the better, older ones, but it was one prior to redoing of the teeth, which we'll look at closely on the Spinosaurus once again, and also prior to glass eyes. Now, I love glass eyes in concept on these figures, and I think the Spinosaurus executes them better than most of the figures, if I'm being completely honest. But mine has a funny defect where the pupil, is it on this side? It is on this side. But the pupil on this side of the head is set really far forward. So it almost looks like just a solid green eye. And normally I feel like that would bug me because that's an obvious quality control issue. And this isn't the first version of the figure I've seen that has this. but it doesn't. I think it actually looks really cool, and I think there's just something about the design of the Spinosaurus that just looks kind of neat with edgy green glowing eyes with no pupils. I do think if they were to perfect glass eyes for the Hammond Collection, in my humble opinion, I think that they would print the pupil on the outside, so you still have that nice, vibrant, glossy, marbled look for the eyes in the back, but you have a very clear pupil printed on the top. And I have seen some, air quotes, defects of that, I believe, on the Spinosaurus figures from them, so that is a possibility, and it seems to happen by mistake, and I thought those figures looked pretty good printed like that. But yeah, the glass eye on the other side that's actually printed correctly on this Spinosaurus looks pretty dang good, if I'm being honest, compared to the other figures where the pupils just get utterly lost. But I do really like the defect that I have very subjectively, just for that really creepy looking solid green eye. Now, since we're up in the head area again, it is worth mentioning that the head is a little bit too large compared to the rest of the body. It's really not egregious. I don't think it's that bad. I do think the thing that bothers me more is just it is slightly wider than it should be, which is a pretty consistent issue for a lot of Hammond Collection figures, unfortunately. It could have been a lot worse for my favorite design from the franchise, though, so I'm not really complaining for a toy from Mattel. Now, bringing the Ceratosaurus back into frame again here, the Ceratosaurus had teeth that were just molded into the upper and lower jaw parts and were just painted over. This new generation of Hammond Collection figures, which is absolutely fantastic, and all of the other Mattel figures as well, mainline stuff included, if you watched my review of the Tail Thrasher Spinosaurus from Jurassic World Rebirth, the teeth are actually molded in a separate rubbery material that gives them nice flex so they don't poke any children's hands, but they also look super sharp and accurate to the depiction in the film, which is super cool. And speaking of the depiction in the film, the paint deco here is pretty darn awesome. My only complaint, which is something that I saw go around prior to people getting this figure in hands, is the lack of blue markings on the sail. I can confirm there is a grayish blue almost wash going on in the detail on the sail, so there was an attempt. I just think it could have been more obvious. But they got most of the patterns down here and everything. It's very stampy, but they got the character down and the general color tones down for the budget they were probably working with. And I think it looks really darn good for a figure of this size and for the price that I'm paying. $60 for something this big and this articulated. I mean, it's hollow. It doesn't feel like you bought that much when you're holding it in hand. And if I'm being honest, the hollowness of these figures and their extremely lightweight really lends them a good hand in balancing themselves. So they are super easy to pose and get into pretty decent poses, particularly this one. Mine has really tight leg joints, which is very, very nice. Now, speaking of paint, before we get off that topic, once again, dew claws are not painted on the inside of the legs, which is unfortunate. I wish that little bit of effort was still there, because we have the colors of the claws on the hands and the feet. Why can't you just take a paintbrush and just blob it on there, even if it's not like the neatest thing in the world? It's just a glaring sculpted detail that I feel like needs a little bit of color love. Now, we did talk about joints briefly, so let's go over the articulation of this guy. A big thank you to my channel members, particularly Raphael Tree Kangaroo and a Trash Bug for being Spino Chads. If you want to support my future content, click the big join button next to my name down below. The joints are pretty nice and tight on my particular version across the whole thing. I know quality control is a thing even across the Hammond Collection. Even with this figure, I've seen some pretty horrific ones, particularly in the neck, where people had to go in, take things into their own hands and repair the joints. But mine has held up for the past few months pretty darn well, if I'm being honest, and no complaints from me. I do wish the Hammond Collection would engineer their head and neck joints just a tiny bit better, just to get a little bit better range of motion out of them. This Spinosaurus is one of the better ones. I wish it could look up a little bit more, but it's not too bad. Its down is pretty good, Its side to side is actually pretty darn good as well. It is a lot better than the Carnotaurus that we reviewed, I'll give it that. But when you actually get into handling it in hand, it feels like it could have just a little more give in some particular areas, particularly vertically. The jaws work fine. You have the rubbery inner fleshy membrane connecting the upper and lower jaw. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, this one locks into 3 separate positions, so closed, open, actually no, it's only 2 separate positions, my bad, for each the upper and lower jaw pieces. So the top jaw has 2 positions it locks into, the bottom jaw has the same. So you can mix and match them with each other, but there really is only a closed mouth and an open mouth look if you're moving both pieces together. Oh, and then you've got the tongue in there that's on a little joint as well. Now, while I understand they might have done this just so there isn't any extra wear and tear and they can engineer these fleshy corner bits on the mouth potentially better for longer durability during play, I really wish they had the old style, like once again from this Ceratosaurus, where you can just move it however you want. Get a lot more expressiveness out of it. I feel like it's a little bit unfortunate that we are limited with something that's a lot more expensive. Still though, it could have been worse, and this figure looks equally as good with its mouth closed as it does with its mouth open, so I'm not really complaining. Well, quite a lot of expressiveness here, I must say. One thing I will note though, I don't like how flimsy these jaw joints feel. It feels like the upper jaw piece and the lower jaw piece are almost these big shells that are glued to these very thin strips of plastic that are actually part of the jaw mechanism. It's something that it's hard to explain without you actually feeling the joint, but it's something I wouldn't play with too roughly and not too often if I'm being honest. For my purpose with this figure, I'm just displaying this one in my living room downstairs, so it's really not a big deal. The forelimbs have a great range of motion and expressiveness. You've got disc joints in the shoulders and elbows and in the wrists as well. The hands are actually made out of a super pliable rubbery material, so they're not going to break those at any time soon, and also child safety if you're getting this for your kid and don't want them to get actually shredded by Spinosaur claws. So yes, lots of great expressiveness with the hands. They did ditch the mid-torso joint that was present in the Tyrannosaurus Rex from the Hammond Collection. The Giganotosaurus also did not have it, and the Spinosaurus, I would have actively hated it if it had it, if I'm being honest, because they would have to find some way to split the sail in half, and that would probably look very unsightly in most design decisions, particularly from Mattel. I don't trust Mattel to do that in a very flattering way. My one complaint visually with the sail is more sculpturally. If you flip it over to this side, you can actually see there's a bit of a seam line on this side where both halves of the body were stuck together. It's not too obvious. It could have been a lot worse. I've seen a lot worse from Mattel in terms of quality control like this, but it is a little bit obvious when you're displaying it from that side. The legs are ratcheted at the hips, which is perfect for posing this, and the knees are super tight, the ankles are super tight, the feet are super tight, so you really don't have to worry about this guy falling over, at least my version of the figure. So lots of great range of motion in that regard. I do feel like some of the backward motion at the knee is a little bit more limited than I would have liked it to be. And at the ankle, like moving it forward is a little bit more limited as well. I think they made that more of a locking point for the figure so it doesn't topple over, which is fine by me. And then last but not least, we have the tail. The tail has a ball joint at the base, so you could rotate it around all beautifully, like so. And it has a wire, I don't know how to explain it, like a jointed wire frame kind of something on the inside of the tail. Reminds me of the old Kenner figures a bit. So it's got a rubber sleeve on the outside, and you can't really pose it too much. You can get a little bit of expressiveness out of it, but then you get some weird wrinkles in it. It's very similar to the Hammond Collection Brachiosaurus neck. Take with that information as you will. I guess one thing I didn't touch on with the paint is the red color abruptly ending at the base of the neck here when you move the neck joint forward. It's a little bit obvious. But yes, I feel like this covers most of my thoughts on this figure. I am out of practice. I haven't recorded a review like this in so long. But this was a really fun one to come back to in a new chapter of my life. This particular design has always been like my mental mascot for everything dinosaur related. This design of the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park is pretty timeless to me. Like, even if Spinosaurus continues evolving and evolving into new different shapes and forms every other week, I feel like this particular depiction of it is always going to have a place in a lot of people's hearts. It's a really well-designed movie monster character. It really is, and it's held the test of time. And it's really cool seeing Mattel and Universal just allowing recognition for this particular depiction of Spinosaurus in the franchise that seemingly lost to the franchise in a lot of ways. I will be back with another review very soon, hopefully, but thank you for watching, and catch you all soon.